Senator Kaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to our witnesses. Admiral Papar, I'd like to direct this question to you. The discussion has had an awful lot, as it should, about North Korea, about China. I want to ask you about the cooperation that we're seeing some of our adversaries engage in. So in the Indo-PACOM, talk about joint activities between Russia, China, and North Korea, and the growing closeness of the relationship and the threats that pose to the work that we do with our allies.
Morning, Senator Kaine. It's a transactional symbiosis where each state fulfills the other state's weakness to mutual benefit of each state. For instance, is that China has provided 70% of the machine tools and 90% of the legacy chips that's enabled Russia to rebuild its war machine. And then coming back to China is potentially submarine quieting help, as well as other help in some of the areas where Russia is strong. In addition, you've got the North Korea that are sending thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of artillery shells and thousands of KN-24 short-range missiles to Russia with, as General Brunson said, the expectations of concessions coming back in the form of air defense, surface-to-air missile help, quieting terror, help with their Kilo submarine fleet, and so forth. And then finally, in the physical space this last summer, I saw the longest range joint patrol of PLA Navy and Russian Pacific Fleet formation in the Bering Sea. And so they're deepening their ability to operate together, and they're demonstrating that by going further afield and in bigger formations.
Quickly, I just would like to ask for your impression of the importance of the AUKUS framework in the Indo-Pacific.
AUKUS is it's going to confer a generational advantage on both countries, but I cherish the advantage it confers on the United States of America. And so, I'll say, first of all, the ability to operate out of Sterling in submarine rotational force west in Sterling gives the American submarine force an Indian Ocean port. It gives us the ability to range the Indian Ocean without limitation in the Straits of Malacca, the Lombok, or the Sunda Strait. It's a straight shot to the South China Sea, closer and faster than Hawaii, San Diego, Bangor, Maine, and then Australia's contribution into the Defense Industrial Base. $3 billion investment in the submarine defense industrial base.
Yeah, imagine Congress having that debate about whether we would invest $3 billion in the Australian workforce. It would be a very tough discussion here.
It'd be worth it, though.
It'd be worth it, but the fact that the Australian Parliament made that investment in the U.S. workforce demonstrates the degree to which they're concerned about China. Let me just do one last thing here. I have filed a resolution with a number of my colleagues to turn off the global tariffs imposed by the president last week, which are now somewhat on pause. There's still a 10% tariff. I'm not going to ask you about the policy, but I just want to point out one of the reasons I filed the motion. Primarily, it's because it's a tax increase on American consumers, but I don't think we should treat allies badly. Use Australia as an example. You've talked about how AUKUS is very important. The president has imposed a tariff on Australia. We have a trade surplus with Australia. Not a deficit. We have a trade surplus with Australia. So why put a tariff on their products? How about other allies? Japan, 25% tariff on Japan. Why 25%? The measure of the tariff was not Chinese trade barriers. It was the trade deficit that we have with Japan measured by deficit in goods. It did not include the full trade picture, goods and services. If you add in services, all these trade deficits actually get narrow because the U.S. is such a great exporter of services. But even if there's a trade deficit in goods with Japan, of course there is. The trade deficit is we buy more of their stuff than they buy of our stuff. Our population's 3 times the size of the Japanese population. So yes, we buy more Japanese goods with 340 million people than 120 million people buy of American goods. And so we're going to punish them for that? It makes no sense. The primary reason I've filed the challenge is because I don't want to tax American consumers with a big national sales tax. But the tariff strategy that punishes allies is no way to be strong in an international world where the U.S. has built allies over decades that provide some of our greatest edge, qualitative edge, against our adversaries. So that's just an editorial comment, but thank you for your appearance.
It surely is.